Hello and welcome to another episode of your Manchester United Fix. Now, when we first started this podcast, we knew that games weeks would be like this, where there's plenty to talk about. So last week's podcast, we started from the end of the week and worked our way backwards. I think this week we should start at the beginning, the West Ham game, obviously the first defeat of the week. Brad, what are you thinking?
Yeah, well, there was 11 changes, wasn't there? So, it was a very much different side to the West Ham game on last Sunday when United played them in the league. And it was a very, very different game as well. United never really looked like they were going to score. In a way, similar to the weekend game, but West Ham didn't look like too dangerous either. Obviously, they did snatch that goal, and they took a 1-0 lead, and they held on for the majority of the game. But unlike the West Ham game on the Sunday in the league, there was just nothing going for United, nothing going forward. They never looked like they were going to score at all. So I think that's what Solskjaer will be most disappointed with, not necessarily the result, although he would have liked to stay in this competition. But it was just the manner in which the defeat came.
That is the questionable aspect of it, though, is as West Ham made 10 changes as well, because Bowen was the only player to remain in their squad. So that is almost the reverse squads versus reverse squad. And with the depth that Manchester United have, you would have expected them to go out there and get the result, especially being at home in front of a full house at Old Trafford.
Yeah, no doubt they should have been able to pick up 3 points. Like you said, 72,000 were in Old Trafford in the Carabao Cup. On a midweek game in September when people are going back to school, university, etc. It's a very good turnout. But like you said, West Ham made changes too, and United squad depth is something that they've been crying out for in recent years. And Ole finally got the backing in the summer to bring in those types of players to bolster the bench. And ultimately they had to start bringing on Fernandes and Greenwood to spark some change. I thought, having said that though, I thought Van der Beek played excellently in midweek. I thought himself and Sancho were kind of like the only bits of fresh air going on. But yeah, they really will be disappointed with that, and not only because of the manner it happened, but because they're out of a cup competition that they would have been feeling quite confident about winning, because I think the Carabao Cup is undervalued because it's the first chance at silverware every single season. The trophy, I think the final is late February, early March time. So it's a really, really good start to get that winning momentum, get that silverware. And in case you're still in the Champions League, still in the FA Cup, you've still got a chance of the Premier League, then you've got that winning mentality. You've already got one piece of silverware, and that can really help you build.
Well, that's a good point. And one interesting thing that West Ham are obviously in the Europa League, so they're playing on Thursday nights. And you would have thought it was a competition where if they didn't go to Old Trafford and get the victory, they wouldn't be too fussed about it because their focus is elsewhere. Whereas United, like you said, it's a chance at domestic success and it's another trophy for the cabinet. So for that to go the other way, it is one that boggles the mind, really, because you would want Manchester United to push on. But then again, now Manchester United are in this situation where they can focus on bigger trophies ahead. And yeah, it's a good thing in terms of confidence, winning that trophy. But it also takes a lot of, so now they'll have a rest when them game weeks are on. And it was only the first round, so still a long way to go in that competition. And he could have played another 4 or 5 games, got to the semis, got to the finals, and then suffered a defeat. So if you're losing at this stage, it might be a bit easier, might be a bit more difficult. Who knows? Time will tell. But interesting about Sancho and Donny when you briefly mentioned there. One person I thought did really well when he came on was Mason Greenwood. He was turning in the West Ham defenders in and out since he came on, and it was absolutely fantastic to watch. But one thing on Sancho, I did think he improved, but I didn't think he was still at the standards that we're expecting of him.
Yeah, it is one of those things with Jadon Sancho. Like at the minute, it does seem like every game is just being used as a confidence boost, and I don't think for £73 million that should be the case. And I know you pay the current market fee, and he can't help the fee. Manchester United decided to pay that amount. That's what Dortmund valued him at, and they got their man. He's not at fault for the fee, but because of that price tag will always come judgment. And the way he started at Manchester United isn't the way anyone expected, especially when you look at the videos and highlights of the matches that he finished with Dortmund just before the Euros. And I think every single game for him is a confidence boost, and it will take time. We're saying it week in, week out. We've seen it multiple times with Bundesliga players. But there was some positive signs on Wednesday night. Definitely started running at players, starting beating players, getting behind defence, playing balls through. I think that was promising. And then you also mentioned, you mentioned the trophy situation as well, and the fact that there's 5 or 6 games after that, and you could have lost later on. Well, it looks like probably Manchester United would have been knocked out in the next round anyway, considering Manchester City have drawn West Ham. So, blessing in disguise, potentially, although United do have a very good record against Pep Guardiola. So, who knows? We'll never know, actually. We'll never know.
Then again, if you're looking at the run United have got over the course of the next month or two, another difficult match in there is probably not what they're wanting. But at least they can focus on that, because let's be honest, it is going to be a difficult run.
It certainly is going to be a difficult run. I think it starts with Leicester away, and then we welcome Manchester United, welcome Liverpool, Man City. They go to Chelsea. I think Tottenham are also in there as well. Tottenham away sounds familiar. I think that's after the Leicester away game as well. So there's plenty of fixtures, and then Arsenal as well. So who knows? And they play today. They play this afternoon, don't they? Arsenal versus Tottenham. I think that'll be a great game to watch. So look forward to watch that. But like you said, difficult fixtures to come, and we'll get on the Premier League.
But one interesting question that I did want to ask you about this. So obviously, in our first episode of this podcast, we did preview the season and the fixtures, and we picked out this chunk of fixtures as it runs up to Christmas as the pinnacle point of the season, really, where it's either going to be make or break. If you win all these games, you're going to be in a fantastic position at the time of the season where you want to be in a fantastic position. Obviously, if it doesn't work out, you've still got time to build on it. But after the games that we've had so far this season, how confident are you now feeling compared to when 4 or 5 weeks ago?
I think the performances haven't been there. The points have been there. And I think that's very easy to say, but it's worrying time for Manchester United because of this Aston Villa defeat, because of the defeat in midweek, because of the Young Boys defeat in last week, 8 days ago. So it is a worrying time. They scraped past West Ham. They took a 90th minute penalty save. Newcastle performance, maybe they were living off the energy that the Ronaldo return gave them. Convincing win against Leeds. Southampton 1-1 draw. There's a few disappointing performances in there, and I think that's what's most worrying is the performances, not necessarily the points, because the points are looking okay. And we'll move on to the Premier League table soon enough. But it's the performances that will be most worrying to these Manchester United fans so far.
I think you got it spot on there, actually, because Lou Macari made an interesting point. He said that if you look at the games that we've played before, especially the Newcastle game, obviously in the end, it was quite an emphatic victory. But if you discard the goalkeeper's mistakes, and if he'd saved them shots instead, then we could have easily been in trouble in that game. And obviously, you've got to give credit to teams like West Ham and Aston Villa, because, 5-6 years ago, they maybe were teams that you turn up and you're like, that's 3 points, have that in the bag next week. But now they are challenging teams. They are up there in the Premier League, and it's no longer a walk in the park. So you got to give them respect especially when teams come to Old Trafford and do 1-0, keep a clean sheet. That's something that was unheard of years ago. But anyway, let's move on to obviously the Aston Villa match that happened yesterday, 1-0 right at the last. And then obviously Bruno missing that penalty, which is a topic in itself. So let's just quickly chat about the game before we get onto that one.
Yeah, so the game was one that was actually very, very dull to watch. I was at Old Trafford yesterday. Don't know whether the 12:30 kickoff threw people off at late notice, but it was a very, very dull game. United looked slow. They looked boring. They looked clueless going forward at times. But there's one thing that I think needs to be highlighted, and not many people have highlighted it, but Ronaldo yesterday didn't look like he wanted the ball at all. Just did not look like he wanted it. Usually he's drifting out to the wide and demanding the ball. Today he was almost hiding out on the width. He's almost hiding out on the wide flanks. And there was a really, really good point I made in my head in the first half was that Greenwood picked up the ball on the right, and Ronaldo almost took it off him, and he was in the way of him. And Ronaldo shouldn't be out on the right. There was no one in the box. There was plenty of times where I saw the ball was out on the left or the right wing. You had Luke Shaw get the ball, picked up his head to look into the box. There's no one there. Ronaldo was either on the other width, on the other wing, or he was with Pogba, way too close to Pogba. It seemed like they were just getting a bit mixed up of where Ronaldo is actually playing. And many people thought United had bought Ronaldo to be that poacher and be that goal scorer and be inside the 18-yard box. But for the majority of the game yesterday, there was no one there. That 18-yard box was vacant.
Well, that is not obviously, but that is usually the reason you would have thought he's in the team to be that number 9, because we've struggled to find someone that fits that position. Obviously, Eddie is perfect when he does play in that position, but it doesn't make sense if he is switching from wide or dropping back. It just leaves a huge gap for no one to be there. But one thing is, obviously, he wasn't involved in the West Ham game on Wednesday. Obviously, I don't know the implications of that. Obviously, I imagine he's just giving him a rest. But in Ronaldo's mindset, what would you think he's thinking about that situation?
What about being bent about not playing in the West Ham game on the week? Yeah, that one. Yeah. I think he will have been disappointed not to have played, to be fair, because I think he knows himself how fit he is, and maybe we don't know, obviously, but maybe he said to Ole, "Look, I've played 90 minutes for 3 games straight. I've not really had a pre-season. Can I just have this one off?" Maybe he said that, and fair play if he has. But if Solskjaer's made that decision and said to Ronaldo, "Are you okay to play?" and he's gone, "Yeah," and he's still not played in, then that's a different story. But we won't know too much about that one. But I do think it was a very different Cristiano Ronaldo on Saturday.
Absolutely. Well, let's move on to the Bruno penalty miss, because one, it's obviously a debate whether he should be taking it. Obviously, you have got Cristiano in the team. 2, his run-up was completely changed. And 3, he scored 42 of his last 45 penalties. It's an incredible record for anyone to have. You just don't expect him to miss, especially to blaze it over the bar like he did.
You could probably spend about an hour and a half analysing this penalty kick, because it starts with the way it was given was Fernandes basically won it himself. He picked up the ball in the right wing and he puts in the ball into the box, puts in a dangerous ball in, and it kind of takes a bounce. Cavani misses the flick on, it takes a bounce and comes off the elbow. And it is in an unnatural position. It is a penalty, don't get me wrong about that. And then it's everything from the whistle of the referee to give the penalty initially. Everything in that space was about 3 or 4 minutes before he even took it. And it starts with the Aston Villa players huddling around Bruno on the penalty spot. Bruno's already put the ball down. He's already decided he's taking the penalty. It's very clear that he is taking the penalty. Martinez is getting in his face immediately. Mings is getting in Fernandez's face and trying to stand on the penalty spot. Fred then gets involved and tries to push Mings away, and it starts a little bit of a hustle and bustle, etc., etc. And that's an extra 30 seconds for Bruno to be thinking, where am I going to put this penalty? And then Martinez is now pointing at Ronaldo, like saying, like, why aren't you taking the penalty? Like, you take the penalty. You're the penalty.
Cristiano.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know, like, clearly getting in Fernandez's head saying, how are you taking it? Ronaldo's much better than you. Ha ha, like pointing in his face already, which is clearly throwing him off. And then he finally puts the ball down, and this is taking probably 3 or 4 minutes. And you're then thinking, hop, skip, and a jump. None of that. Straight into it. Blasts it into Rosette. And there's a video online of a Stretford ender right behind the goal. And he's recording it. And I've never seen a ball take off at such speed, get that much height in record time. It was a shocking penalty. Yeah. And then Martinez turns around and does a little dance in front of the Stretford end or whatever.
The audacity of doing that. The audacity of doing that.
But he's been known for that, didn't he? He's made some great saves for Argentina in the Copa America.
Yeah.
So fair play to him. If it works, it works. And that's exactly what he did.
Tim Krul's another prime example of that. He's always a bit of a penalty merchant. But just before that penalty decision did happen, and obviously moving back to the Villa goal, Solskjaer came out and said in his interview that he believes the referee should have got involved and obviously given it offside. We saw it in the Leicester game. I'm sure they'll be looking at that. Brendan Rodgers will have watched that and be thinking, let's have some consistency here. I want to get your thoughts on that one.
Now, we've not had too many discussions about VAR this season, and that's for the best because it's been working. We saw in the Euros how well it can work, how well technology can work, and the Premier League seems to kind of adopted a little bit of their philosophy and the fact that making quicker decisions, not making ridiculous offside calls for someone's pinky finger being offside for calling for the ball and things like that. So, VAR has done its job. But the one thing that still needs fixing with VAR is consistency. Like you said, the Leicester players will be furious to see that goal be given. Because, all right, let's just paint the picture. So it's a corner out on the left for Villa. They put in a very, very good ball for Courtney Hawes to get the ball beaten. I don't know who was marking, but to beat the man at the front post to head the ball and steer it past De Gea into the near post. But if you actually freeze frame it, Ollie Watkins is standing in front of De Gea in an offside position from one, and there's no debate on whether it's offside or not. He is 3 or 4 yards offside, very clear. But then it's the way that he's blocking De Gea from even diving. And for that goal to not... I was in the stadium, there was, from what I recall, there was no VAR checking goal sort of thing. There was nothing. It was like, goal given, done. That was it. And I was baffled. I still can't believe today that no one has looked at that at Stockley Park or where they make the decisions this season and thought, hang on, Ollie Watkins is offside and clearly is impeding David De Gea. It's not only his view, but the way he could dive to get that ball. And to be fair, De Gea was probably never getting that ball because it was a beautiful header from Courtney Hawes, and it did end up in the back of the net. But it's miles offside. And if you don't know the rules, that should not be counted.
Well, that's the thing, and it is the rules, isn't it? Obviously, you can't have the same match officials in charge of every game in the Premier League. That is impossible to happen. But one change that should be made is that everyone has same interpretation of the rules. If you have different interpretations, then that's where the lack of consistency comes into it. So that is obviously something that we've been pleading for since it was introduced, to be honest. Obviously, like you said, we've seen how it can be used. So hopefully one day we get to that. But I'm sure, like we said we're going to make a podcast about our VAR opinions, so we can do that in the future. But
save
let's move on anyway.
Next international break, we'll save that one for. It's a few weeks from now,
Absolutely.
isn't it? I think it's only 2 weeks from now, actually.
I believe so. Yeah, not long, October. But a couple of more negative points from the game is obviously Maguire and Shaw lost them too, which is a big loss to the defence.
Yeah, so Luke Shaw was brought off early in the first half, maybe around the half an hour mark-ish. He went down initially and then played on for about 10 minutes, 12 minutes, and he got beaten down the left wing. And it was probably lucky for him that he got taken off because he was having an absolute stinker at left back. Villa were getting in behind. They were targeting Shaw, which is a strange one after some great performances in recent few months. They were getting in behind. He also picked up a yellow card early on in the first half, so it was probably good for him to be taken off, so his confidence wasn't knocked too much. But yeah, the extent of his injury is unknown, although it looks like he may miss out on for the Real game, which is a massive blow. But the interesting one about Maguire's situation was when Harry Maguire goes down, you know it's for something serious. He's not one to fake an injury or want to come off. This is a man who played an entire 90 minutes for 38 games in his first Premier League season at Manchester United. And he went down similar to Shaw, actually. He went down initially, had some treatment, and it looked like there was no doubt he was going to get subbed off. But they must have sprayed some deep heat or magic spray, whatever it was, and he came back on. And he played about an extra 10, 15 minutes. Now, I thought, if you're Solskjaer and you captain's down and you know he never goes down, it must be something serious. Get him off. Just get him off. Protect him. It's a long, long season. And I think Solskjaer missed out on that one because you could clearly see he wasn't running right and he's down for a while. I think Lindelof should have came. You've got a good backup now. That's the thing. You've got a good backup. You trust Lindelof. You've trusted him for 2 seasons. Why not bring him on straight away? Just bring off Maguire. You know he's struggling. Take him off. And that was the only criticism I would have had yesterday of Solskjaer, because you've already made 2 subs for injuries. You've only really got 1 left, and he brings on Cavani, fair play, but you can't really change the tactics too much with 1 substitution. So I'm not having any of the criticism that Solskjaer was getting for his substitute with Cavani. Should have changed it earlier? Maybe. Yes, that's the only criticism that you can have. But when you do lose 2 substitutions to injury, I don't think you can really blame him for the way that the game panned out.
You know what? That is a really good point, actually, because obviously there is such a long season and you've got so many games ahead of you. It's not even the important part of the season yet. Obviously, the running will come to that point. And obviously, if these are serious injuries or even just niggles, because if you have pick up a niggle at this point in the season, and then you go and play 2 months of football where you've got 2-3 games every week, that's where these niggles turn into injuries and then turn into serious injuries.
Oh, we saw that.
So,
with
like
Marcus
you said,
Rashford, didn't
sometimes
we? Saw that with Rashford.
Precisely, yeah.
His
precisely.
shoulder, his ankle, foot, whatever it was, and he's been out for 2.5 months with surgery needed. So prime example there with Rashford really playing on through injuries.
Exactly. So hopefully they're both not out for too long. We do get them back and they are fighting fit for the rest of the season. But before we move on to obviously that Villarreal game and the Everton game, let's just have a little catch up of the other teams. The under-23s played Everton on Friday night and they won 1-0 in a good victory in the Premier League too. The 18s played yesterday against Stoke City, similar time to the first team kicking off actually. They won 4-2. Manny Norquette got another 2 goals, so that's 5 in 2 games for him. And then obviously the women played today and they probably weren't want us to mention the scoreline. They lost 6-1 to Chelsea, which maybe just shows the difference in class between them 2 teams. Chelsea, obviously at the peak at the moment, they're flying, really. They've got ambitions of winning the Champions League and everything like that. Whereas Manchester United, obviously, just still regrouping under Mark Skinner. And hopefully when they come to play him again this season, they can switch around the results.
One thing I would like to ask you in terms of the under-18s and 23s team is, what sort of availability and promise is there coming through the ranks on the left-back situation, particularly of interest because Luke Shaw's out, and Brandon Williams is out on loan at Norwich, and Alex Telles is coming back from an injury. And with Luke Shaw now out, and you've got Diego Dallo at left back, but we've also forgot to mention that Wan-Bissaka also suffered a minor injury yesterday, and he's a doubt for the Villarreal game. I know we'll come on to the Villarreal game, but is there a left back there that you feel is ready for 1 game, maybe 2 games, to kind of give a little bit of left back coverage?
It is interesting. That is a very, very interesting question because Alvaro Fernandez has been fantastic from when he joined last season to this season, but there's a level of being fantastic and then there's a level of playing for the first team, and they are 2 completely different things. Because I'll be honest, when I saw Brandon Williams, I wouldn't have really looked at him and thought, yeah, he should be a first team player, get him in the first team right now, which is no disrespect to him and no real disrespect to me. That's just what I thought of him. Obviously, you see people like Scott, Mason, they were next level. Brandon, he was good, but I wouldn't have put him straight in there. But then again, with defenders, it is a little bit more difficult to distinguish whether they are a top player or not. Therefore, Alvaro is a very good player, but sometimes they struggle with him. He's a bit hot-headed sometimes, or he likes to play a bit far forward sometimes. So obviously, when you are gambling with these big Premier League games and these big Champions League games, it obviously is a big risk. But obviously, on the Wan-Bissaka front, you've got Ethan Laird out on loan as well, and he is a talent, and he could probably play in that left-back position as well. So it is interesting. Obviously, they do have Brandon, so they could recall him. But yeah, Alvaro Fernandez is probably one of the few options to promote, obviously, from the under-23s. But yeah, it's an interesting question, is that? But they do, like I said, they got a lot of players out on loan that they could potentially bring in. But hopefully it doesn't get to that and that they will be fit to play. And especially Villarreal next week, the arch nemesis in the old Europa League. How do you think that one's going to go?
Well, it's Villarreal. They are just that team that seems to be able to pull out victories when nothing's going for them. They deserved the Europa League final. They deserved to win that match. United were never at it. I was in Gdansk. I was at the game. and you never got the sense that United were going to win. They didn't have the options off the bench that night, and Solskjaer knew that. He didn't trust his substitutes. He made his first substitute in the 100th minute, 110th minute, maybe, I don't know, but very,
It's
very
ridiculous.
late, very late. And Cavani's goal was a goal-mouth scramble that could have gone anywhere, could have been offside. It was United were very, very poor, and Villarreal just know how to win big games. And that's the worry with three of your main four starting defenders potentially out, is that Villarreal could cause Manchester United some real serious issues at the back, and they cannot afford to lose another one, especially at home. United need to pick up those 3 points to get their Champions League group started.
That's exactly what I was going to say. That's 3 losses in 4 games, which isn't a record United really like to keep a hold of. So obviously it is potentially pushing towards a must-win.
It is a must-win, especially if this Manchester United team is expected to make the knockout stages at a minimum this year. They were the same last year, but they didn't even manage to do that. In a much harder group, give them some credit there. But in the position that they were in, in a away win at PSG, a home thrashing over Leipzig, a home thrashing over Istanbul, and then you go and lose in Istanbul, just like United lost to FC Young Boys last week. It's not, it's similar. There's some similar trends starting to creep into this United Champions League side. And Villarreal on Wednesday, they'll be up for it. They'll be thinking, "Yep, we're gonna do these lot again." But United have to get 3 points here, and they were lucky. They were lucky, to be fair, because Atlanta and Villarreal drew 2-2 in their first game. So there's no one really taking charge of this group yet. But a win against Villarreal would be so key for Solskjaer, and he's desperate for that.
One aspect of the whole situation that I keep slipping my mind, especially, is that how we've recruited since last season. We've we've spoken about the signings and everything before, but since we've been on this run of the past couple of weeks where it's not really gone our way, you do start looking at different excuses in a sense of why it's not happening. But at the end of the day, it should be happening when you've got Cristiano Ronaldo in your squad. You've got the strong spine, as we've spoke of. You should be churning out results on a weekly basis, and teams should be turning up to Old Trafford scared to play this team, intimidated by it, really.
And on
obviously,
paper,
at the moment, it's just, yeah, exactly. But whereas when it happens, it just doesn't seem to be that way. So they've obviously got to find this fight back. And I saw a post online where someone said these apologies need to stop happening and players just need to get focused and just fight and just give everything they've got, because that's what Manchester United is. That's one in the blood. That's what's instilled in the academy right through to the players, is the fight and your own performance of giving it 100% out on the pitch. But obviously, yeah, Villarreal is going to be a tough game. They're no mugs. They're going to be coming and thinking that they're going to get a win there as well, after obviously they did draw the first game. So it is all open. And obviously, if worse does come to worse and they don't pick up any points, I would say it's not over, obviously, but something seriously needs to happen. Everton is the next Premier League game, and that could be a big red flag if we lose to Rafa Benitez's team. That is a big, big game, the blue side of Merseyside. How do you think that one's going to go?
It is, especially because the red side are top of the league. They are top of the league by a point. And this is what I was saying earlier on the podcast, is that there's the points are there, the performances aren't. If I can speak properly, the performances aren't there at the minute. And United will be desperate for another 3 points against an Everton side that are playing incredibly well. I'm looking at the league table right now. Everton are on the same points as United, exact same record: 4 wins, 1 draw, 1 loss. And Rafa Benitez has a history of getting some fine results at Old Trafford in his time. Some of them Manchester United fans won't want to remember at all, and some of the times, and United have beaten Rafa quite a few times. But like you said, it's almost a must-win again. There's almost 2 must-win games this week. Obviously, Champions League won for its own reason because they need points to go through. But you can't really have back-to-back home games and only pick up 1 point if they were to draw against Everton. Obviously, they lost against Villa, so it's almost a must-win again.
Yeah, absolutely. But one thing, whilst all this has been happening, is that the Premier League table is still looking pretty kind to Manchester United fans. Obviously, no one's really run away with it as of yet. Whereas like in the previous seasons, City might have been a few points ahead now. Liverpool might have been a few gaps ahead. Whereas this season, it is a difficult season. It's going to be for grabs for anyone who can string a few results together.
Yeah, and the table's looking nice to Man United at the minute because they've not really played anyone. And like I said last week, we'll come back to this table at the end of October, and then we'll judge where Manchester United are.
So that's all from us two here at your Manchester United Fix. And what is going to be a massive week for Manchester United? We want to hear your thoughts as well as you listening to our thoughts. So please do get in touch on our socials at your Man United Fix. Email us in and even get on the Zoom call with us. It'll be an absolute pleasure. See you next week.